Good morning, guys. It's Saturday morning. You're with Colorado Dave here, and this is Knives in Our Lives. This is my YouTube channel. I do have an Instagram channel as well, Knives in Our Lives. Please do check it out. I could take your help with subscriptions, guys. I'm brand new to this. I've only been doing it for about a month now, and I have tried to put out quite a few videos, and I have made a commitment to really trying to put some materials here in front of you guys, so your support would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, I have made a lot of changes to my collection. I have, as of a few weeks ago, decided to sell off quite a few of my knives. Part of the reason for that is I started falling in love with this company called Chris Reeve Knives. This was my very first one that I got in January of this year, and it's really made me thin out my collection, decide that I just want a few nice knives that I want to share with you guys on a regular basis. I'm going to take them camping with me. I'm going to play in the kitchens with them. I'm going to use them a little bit more and share some of my experiences with you with these knives, break them down for you a little bit, sharpen them with you. And I'm going to maybe be a little bit less about showing you so many knives, but I'll show you a handful of knives, don't get me wrong, but concentrating on basically what these knives are used for and getting the most out of them and actually playing with them. I'm also a big culinary guy, so I have a nice kitchen knife collection as well. I happen to be into shooting knives right now, but I have a couple other. I have a Dull Strong and some other ones that I like as well. But I got some Hinkles, etc. But anyway, that's for another day. I will do some stuff in the kitchen here in the future. Today, I'm here to talk about my Chris Reeve Sebenza Large 31. This is with the natural canvas micarta inlays, and this is double lugged, and this is a beautiful knife that was my first experience into Chris Reeve knives. This is born date of, I think, January 6th. I got it around the end of January. It was the first time I'd ever held a Chris Reeve knife. I'd never even held one in hand before, so it was all brand new to me. I hesitated on going into the world of. I started out with Spydercos, got into my Benchmades, got a bunch of ZTs, but I stayed away from Chris Reeve knives, and I guess I was a little bit leery of the fact that they weren't going to be fun, for one, because a lot of people are like, oh, they're not real fidgety, and they're just not a whole lot of fun. They're beautiful knives, they're a beautiful piece of art, they're a good working tool, but they're kind of old school and they're just not that fun. Is kind of the impression I had in my head. And I'm sharing this with you as a newbie because for other newbies out there that might be thinking the same thing, those people are wrong. This knife is a lot of fun. It's very fidgety. As it breaks in, it just has a very unusual feel and action that is addicting. I could sit in front of the TV and play with this knife for hours. So definitely still fidgety, guys. It's a great knife to take apart because of the simplicity of taking it apart, so it makes it less intimidating, and it makes it fun to take apart, and it makes it, a tool that at any given time you pull out your wrench that they give you, you break it down, and you clean it up a little bit and you put it together when you're sitting in front of the TV, whether you're just sitting at your work desk, whatever. But it just gives you a whole different perspective on how to clean a knife. Some of these knives have a million parts, and they got a million of these, T6 screws that, are stripping out on you, and you got all these headaches, and you don't have any of that with these knives. They're just so simple to break down, which is pretty cool as well. I know I'm going to babble a little bit on this, guys. I have a tendency to do that. Let's go ahead and start with doing a couple comparisons so you get an idea of the size. This is the large Sebenza. I'll start out by putting it up against the small, since I do have the small here. Again, that one has the black micarta inlays. I do like the inlays. We'll get into that a little bit more as we get into the review. Some people have mentioned a medium Sebenza would be nice. I agree 100%. You can see there is quite a size difference. This one's at like 2.98 inches on the blade. This one's at like 3.68 or 3.69, something like that. So unfortunately, it's over 3.5 inches. So it doesn't make it legal in a lot of spots. One of the reasons you got to be a little bit careful with the large, but the feel of the large is just phenomenal. I love the feel of the large. It is just a beautiful knife. That's the comparison up against the small. let's take a couple other knives and just throw them out here and take a look. A couple of my Spydercos that I have around here. Let's look at the Capara. That's what it looks like up against the Capara. Size-wise on the blade, you got almost the same amount of cutting blade, almost identical as far as your cutting blade and your edge cut. As far as your handle, it's almost the same as well. Maybe you get a little bit more length out of the Capara, but they're very, very close in size. So that would be a really good size comparison as far as a knife goes. It does have this thinner profile as well, as does the Sebenza. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Para 2, which is another good one size comparison-wise. You're going to get less edge, cutting edge, out of the Paramilitary 2. You're going to get definitely less cutting edge than you will out of the Sebenza 31 large. The handle size is going to be similar. Looks like the Paramilitary 2 is actually going to be a little bit bigger. So that's what you got there. We'll look at it against the Para 3, which is obviously going to be smaller, and that is not going to match up as well. This is probably going to match up better to the small Sebenza. You obviously have a lot less cutting edge and a little bit less handle as well. So that's what you got going on with that one. This is another knife I love. Like I said, I do like my fidgety knives as well. This is my slicer blade, and this is a ZT Hinderer design, and that's done in the 20CV, which is just a beautiful, beautiful knife, beautiful blade. Love this knife as well. Again, great comparison. 3.5-inch blade. This is just a little over 3.5 inches. So again, just a touch more length on that Sebenza. But handle size and everything else, it's going to be a similar size as far as the actual blade. Let's go ahead and put that away. Let's look at our 940. The Benchmade 940. Again, a fairly good comparison. It's going to have a thinner profile than the Sebenza, but you know, the Sebenza has a pretty nice thin profile, fits in the pocket real nice as well. But the Benchmade 940 Osborne is obviously just going to be that much thinner. For those of you who don't know, that is the Blade HQ Jade version with the M4 steel on the blade, and that was an exclusive that they did just here recently around Christmas time of last year. And we'll put that away. Let's look at my Super Freak. This is another great comparison. Size-wise fits up almost perfect. Lengthwise, you're looking at almost an identical knife. Blade size, almost identical. Similar amount of belly. This is going to have a little bit more width in the blade. It doesn't have the hollow grind. This is going to have a flat grind. This has the M4 steel on it versus having the M35V. But as far as size comparison-wise, these knives definitely match up pretty well for a size comparison. But that's enough on the size comparisons. I think we can probably get past that. Let's get into the blade a little bit, because one of my favorite parts about this knife is the actual blade itself. It is S35VN, which, as many of you I think do know, Chris Reeve was one of the inventors of, he worked with Crucible and was one of the inventors of putting the formula together to make this a true pocket knife steel. The steel was made for pocket knives specifically, and Chris Reeves was one of the people that was very involved in inventing this formulation for pocket knives. And they have a beautiful heat treatment on it. And so this knife has a beautiful, beautiful blade steel that sharpens up really, really nicely, retains an edge nicely. When it does dull out, you just have to give it a little bit of a strop, and it comes back very quickly. For those of you who don't know, it is a hollow grind as well. What I mean by a hollow grind is if you look at the knife this way, you can basically, the knife's going to be wide here and it's going to thin out towards the edge. And then what's unique about Chris Reeves is it doesn't just go in and stop. It actually goes in and then comes back out a little bit like this on both sides. So your hollow grind is going to be basically like this. It's going to come in and then even come back out a little bit like this, but it's a very aggressive hollow grind. So as you start to sharpen your knife over time, you're going to get into thinner and thinner steel, which is going to make that edge sharper and sharper as you get into the blade. So very, very well thought out. And again, with thought of being a user knife and of multiple sharpenings on the blade. So that's pretty darn cool. The other thing to understand about the edge with Chris Reeve knives that's different than most knife companies out there is they do a convex edge. A convex edge is going to be a rounder edge towards the tip. So you're going to have more thickness, a little bit more width in the tip. What is that going to do for you? It's going to give you more strength in the blade. And so in other words, if you're really getting into something, that blade is going to have less of a tendency to chip, but it would have more of a tendency maybe to bend or to roll a little bit. And that's because you have that extra thickness. So it's going to make that blade that much stronger. Now the negative on that is you're not going to get quite as, if you're doing a flat grind like this, you can get a little bit sharper edge that's going to be a little bit deeper as far as the sharpness of that edge. So it'll be a little slicier. So in my opinion, this comes off just a little bit less slicey. So if I'm slicing paper or something with it, and yet I'm taking a Spyderco or something that's more of a flat grind, I sense that Spyderco is going through that paper much easier. And I grant it, paper test is nothing, I get it. But you just feel it in the knife. But now if I take out a thick piece of cardboard and I pull this knife out and I cut it with the convex edge that it comes with, and I cut with my Spyderco, this knife cuts just as well, if not better. Maybe it does cut better, to be honest with you. And it just goes through that cardboard like paper, or like butter, excuse me. It goes through it like it's nothing. And why is that? Because it's got that thickness in that blade and it can take that heavier material. So you really do need to experience the blade in hand, and you need to cut some different materials to understand what I'm saying, but it does make a difference. So it's a personal preference on what you want, but I will tell you to maintain a convex edge is a lot harder. The good in it is it lasts longer, so you can just strop this knife for probably the first 6 months you have it. As it starts to dull out, just throw it and strop it, and then you should be ready to go again. For me, I went ahead and did put a KME edge on it, and I went to more because I want that flat. I want that, the edge is coming out like this. So I'm coming in there and I'm putting a 17-degree angle on that on both sides. It is creating a sharper angle and making this much slicier immediately, because I don't want to wait to grind it down a few times to get to that sharper edge. I want to put that sharper edge on it now. I also like a mirror edge, and so this gives it a nice mirror on the edge as well. So for me, that's how I decided to do my edge. But there's not a right or a wrong way to do it. I've seen both out there. I think more people than not are probably doing it on an angle system like a KME, and those people are getting the same result I am, and they seem to be very happy with it. If you're really good on a belt, which is what you really need to use to make a convex edge, then I would say go for it. But the thing is, if you're doing it on a belt, you have to be consistent all the way across this to make sure that you get that even grind all the way across your edge. Because if you don't, you're going to have issues with there's going to be some flat spots, and it's not going to look even and consistent, and it won't look that good. So keep that in mind, that you do need to know what you're doing. I don't think it's quite as user-friendly when you're using a belt. So if you're good on a belt, dynamite, go for it. But my opinion, don't be afraid to use a edge sharpening system. It will work just great on this knife. The other thing I will tell you about the actual blade itself is I did get double lugs on this. This knife did have to go into the shop when I got it. I will talk about it briefly. I have a couple of videos that talk about it in detail. I don't want to get into it too much, but briefly what happened is basically I was having issues with the pins coming loose on the pivot and on the stop pin. If I would play with the knife, the stop pin would the screw would fall out. The pivot screw would fall out as well. So I ended up having to Loctite both of them. Wasn't happy about that, so I sent it into the shop. They did fix the issue, and life moves on. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. If you want to see more detail on it, because there is quite a bit to it, do feel free to watch one of my other videos that talks a little bit more about it. But for now, it is fixed. Chris Reeves definitely stood behind it 150%. I'm happy with the customer service. I'm happy to have the knife back and satisfied with it. You will notice I did take my lanyard pin out, and that's because I took my lanyard off. I think other people have mentioned this in their videos as well. You will get a shake from that lanyard pin if you don't have a lanyard in there, which is disappointing, but it is what it is. So just be aware you're going to want to take that pin out, or you're going to want to glue it into place if you really want to see the pin in there still. So those are pretty much your two options if you take the lanyard out. That's all I pretty much have to say on that. The only other thing I will talk about here briefly is the interface on the locking system, because that is different than the Sebenza 21, and that is one of the main differences between the 21 and the 31. The only other difference is going to be the pocket clip, which again, they have offset the pocket clip on the 31. I know a lot of people have talked about it. I won't get too much into depth on it, except to tell you that if you put pressure on the clip, it doesn't put any pressure on the lock bar. And so I guess it might make it a little easier to open and close. I think the 21 is pretty easy to open and close anyway, so I don't think it's a huge issue, but I do think it was a nice touch. And it also makes it fit in the pocket just a little bit closer. It brings it closer to your pocket, so that's a positive as well. I was going somewhere else with this knife. What else do I need to talk about? The handle we got into, the Micarta Inlays are beautiful. Love the natural Micarta Inlays. They're definitely picking up color, which I like. They're getting that broken in feeling. I like the pattern of the actual inlays, which is a takeoff of their anniversary special edition inlays. And I love the fact that they're using those for a production run. And I do like it better than the design on the 21 for me personally. So I think it's more filling in the hand. I think there's less, without having that groove in there, I don't think there's anything that's distracting on the fingers, etc. So from my standpoint, I like it. I like it a lot. I like it on the back as well. I do think it gives you a little bit more of a contoured handle feel because you get that extra raised height out of the inlay, that it does make the knife feel a little fuller than like the plain Jane, for example, or some of the graphic ones. I do think it makes it more of a user knife because I think I'm pretty OCD, and I know snail trails are accepted and all that, in the Chris Reeve knives world, but I'm still kind of OCD. And I think this covers up a lot of that. So, I've had this knife and I've carried it quite a bit, and you can see how clean it is. It's still really clean. And a lot of that is because I got a lot of micarta that's covering this, and the micarta protects the scale quite a bit. So that's pretty cool too. Getting back to the interface here, the interface locking system, which is what makes this knife different than the 21, is the fact that they have added a ceramic ball, and they've put it just inside, right where the line is here. You're cut for your, right where your line is there for your, what am I trying to say? Your lock bar, where they cut the lock bar off. There's a little bit that sticks out above and beyond that. It's a ball. It's a ceramic ball that basically sticks out just a little bit past that lock bar, okay? That interfaces with the tang of the blade here. So instead of the whole titanium lock bar butting up against the tang of the blade like it does on the 21, you have this ceramic ball that's right in the middle here on the reverse side that's sticking out just a little bit, and that's what's actually making contact with the tang of the blade. So you have this ball and you got the tang of the blade like this, okay? What that's doing that makes it different is that you have no second detent. So basically, this ball, as it's sliding in and out, okay, it's creating its own groove with the tang of the knife. And this groove that it's creating in the tang of the knife is making it really, really, really smooth over time. So as you open and close this knife, it's incredibly smooth, and there is no second detent because of that. There's just this detent ramp, for lack of a better term, that you're breaking in on it because of this technology. And so it makes it crazy, crazy smooth. And that does make it different from the 21. What it makes it similar to is the Inkosi and the Umnumzun, because they both already have this technology and they've had great success with it. That's why they brought it over to the Sebenza. And that's why they're doing it with the 31 moving forward. What you do need to understand when I was talking about that tang of the blade and how it's going up against that ceramic ball is it will feel different than the 21, because the 21 had the basic frame lock going directly up against the tang of the blade, so it would fit like this. So there was no room for any play whatsoever. Now you have this ceramic ball that sticks out slightly. So you will get a little bit of what they call lock flex in the Sebenza 31, in the Umnumzum, and in the Inkosi. And you're getting that slight bit of lock flex because of the fact you have that ceramic ball. That ceramic ball, though, is a positive thing because it's giving you that smoothness because of the hardness of the ceramic. It's going to give you a lot longer life because it's not going to wear down like the titanium will on the actual frame lock when it's going up against the tang of the blade. So you will get a better experience from it long term. You just have to get an understanding that it is going to feel slightly different, and it is going to perform slightly different than the 21 if that's what you're used to. So I wanted to talk about that briefly and get into that a little bit because that was explained to me by Tim Reeve himself when my knife went into the shop, he actually reached out and called me and had explained to me a little bit about that technology and educated me. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as well. Guys, I think I covered almost everything on this knife. I have done a breakdown on it once. I'm probably going to do another one here soon. I will tell you what I have learned now that they're getting into the S35VN steel, which is what my small one is. This is the S45VN. That what they have done is they do put a stamp to show you, because I had asked, like, where's it telling me what steel's S35, what's S45, because they pretty much look identical. And what I've been told is that it is underneath the washer on the show side when you take the knife apart. So I have done this on camera already, and I did take apart my small one, and I did see the washer and take it off, and underneath it, it had a 45 written there, which was for S45VN. So that is where you're going to find out what the steel is. I will tell you on the large one, and maybe you guys can help me, and again, I apologize, I am a newbie, but I did take this one apart because I was looking for a 35 to be underneath. So when I took this one apart and I took off the show side washer, which is your larger washer, by the way, and I looked underneath it and I cleaned it, there was no 35. There was actually a V, like as in Victor. Now I'm hoping that that stands for S35VN steel, and I hope it does not stand for VG10 or something different, and that I still don't have the right blade on this knife. But I'm a little concerned just because it doesn't have a 35, and I was hoping it was going to have a 35 underneath it. So guys, if you got some clarification on that, would you please just let me know in the comments that that's what it's supposed to say for the S35VN. I apologize, I don't know. It's the weekend. I'd probably call Chris Reeve Knives on Monday to find out if I don't hear from somebody, but I'm just curious because I'm not positive myself. And when I learn, I will share it with you. But anyway, again, this is the double lug. I added the second lug when I got it back from the shop, which I absolutely love. The action on this couldn't be better. Action's dynamite, smooth as could be. Definitely happy with the knife. It's a beautiful, beautiful working knife. I don't know what else you would want in a working knife. It meets all your needs. You know, I see all these videos about, you know, if I only could have one knife for the rest of my life, what would it be? This would definitely be on my list of top 1, 2, or maybe 3 to be considered for that knife. This one might win out, to be honest with you, as the one knife that if I could only have one knife, this would definitely be it. And it's just because it's just so simple, so solid. The tolerances are so tight that I just feel like I wouldn't have trouble with it. This knife would last me forever. So highly, highly recommend it, guys. If you haven't had one in hand, try one out, please. It's a great, great knife. Thanks, Chris Reeve Knives, for putting out such a beautiful product. We'll talk to you guys later. Signing off for now.